Kentucky Rep. Thomas Massie charted his own way until toppled by Trump. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share. There aren't many lawmakers like Thomas Massie left in Congress. The renegade Republican who rose to prominence as an idiosyncratic yet consistent outlier in his party, popular in the Kentucky district that repeatedly sent him to the House, lost his primary bid for re-election Tuesday after a vicious and costly attack by President Donald Trump. Kentucky U.S. Rep. Thomas Massie lost his Republican House primary Tuesday in another test of President Donald Trump's power over his party after he handpicked challenger and ultimate winner Ed Gallrein to oust the incumbent. The stunning outcome caps a career like few others and shows the extent of the president's ability to badmouth and eventually boot out his political adversaries, and that no lawmaker is apparently safe. Massie's defeat comes after the Trump-led ouster of Sen. Bill Cassidy in Louisiana over the weekend and the president's endorsement Tuesday of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in his challenge to Sen. John Cornyn, which sent chills and anger through the Senate. Trump had reserved his fiercest attacks from Massie, a quirky conservative who had become among the most powerful rank-and-file Republicans in the House because of his willingness to vote as he pleased, rather than as the party demanded. And now he's been toppled like so many other Republicans who crossed the president. Massie was undaunted after losing to Ed Gallrein, a former Navy SEAL handpicked by Trump. If the legislative branch always votes with the president, we do have a king, Massie told cheering supporters Tuesday night. But if lawmakers follow the Constitution, he said, we have a republic. Read more. Massie also teased that his political career may not be over quite yet during the closing moments of his concession speech as a raucous crowd broke into chants of 2028 and President. You've made a compelling argument, he replied. We'll talk about it later. Trump said of Massie's defeat, he deserves to lose. Massie's rise from backbench to prominence to defeat. Massie rose from the House Republican backbench, charting his own path and showing again and again he was willing to buck his party and the president. He voted against Trump's big tax cuts bill last year, worried the several trillion-dollar costs would add to the nation's deficits. He rejected Trump's military forays against Iran and Venezuela, opposed to U.S. intervention overseas, and he routinely voted against U.S. foreign aid, including to Israel, drawing millions of dollars against him from pro-Israel interest groups. Rep. Thomas Massie kisses his wife, Carolyn Mouffer, during an election night watch party after losing the Republican Party's nomination at the Marriott Cincinnati Airport, Tuesday, May 19, 2026 in Hebron, Kai. AP photo / Carolyn Castor. Rep. Thomas Massie kisses his wife, Carolyn Mouffer, during an election night watch party after losing the Republican Party's nomination at the Marriott Cincinnati Airport, Tuesday, May 19, 2026 in Hebron, Kai. AP photo / Carolyn Castor. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share Facebook, copy link, copied print, email X linked in Blue Sky, Flipboard, Pinterest, Reddit. Read more and perhaps most remarkably, Massie in partnership with Democratic Rep. Ro Khanna of California persisted in a long-shot effort to force the Justice Department's release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. It was his work on the Epstein files, perhaps more than any of his repeated votes against spending bills and other party priorities, that elevated Massie's profile. Khanna said on X that Massie lost because he had the guts to stand up to the Epstein class and against the war. Trump lashed out at the lowlife Massie as the congressman pushed the issue last year, prolonging a political concern for the White House, a phrase the president repeated Wednesday, speaking to reporters as he prepared to travel to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy to deliver a commencement address. Trump celebrated the great number of victories, not just Massie. Massie's a lowlife, Trump said. House Speaker Mike Johnson said he wasn't surprised that Massie lost, noting the power of the president's endorsements. We don't demand loyalty to the president, said Johnson, that he said the GOP needs people who are not, trying to carve out their own lane, off the grid and into Congress. First elected in 2012 at the tail end of the GOP Tea Party wave before Trump's Make America Great Again movement burst onto the scene, Massie stood out from the start. An engineer by training, Massie designed several patents, some on display in his office, as well as a debt calculator that blinks in flashing red numerals as the nation's deficits pile up. He often wears a miniature version of the debt calculator as a lapel pin. He married his high school sweetheart, Rhonda, and joined her at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They raised their 4 children, living largely off the grid in a solar power home he designed himself, making him something of a legend among a generation of do-it-yourselfers. He raised cattle, drove an early Tesla, and drank raw milk. Inspired by fellow Kentuckian Rand Paul after having put up lawn signs for the senator's election, the libertarian-leaning Massie ran for office himself. Once he won his own House seat, Massie declined to join the newly forming Freedom Caucus, his own far-right views not fully aligning with the conservative coalition. He voted against Johnson at the start of this session for House Speaker. Trump attacked Massie early, and often Trump set his sights on Massie in 2020 during his first presidential term, when the congressman dared to object to a $2.2 trillion aid package to combat the coronavirus pandemic. At the time, Massie refused to allow the COVID-19 package to be approved without a formal roll call, forcing hundreds of lawmakers back to the Capitol. Trump called him a third-rate grandstander. Trump did not let up his criticisms, even after Massie's wife died in 2024. Massie announced in 2025 that he had remarried after proposing to Carolyn Grace Moffer, a former Paul staffer, on the steps of the Library of Congress. He said they planned to live on the farm. The president suggested that Massie got remarried too quickly, writing on social media that his wife will soon find out that she stuck with a loser. Associated Press reporters Michelle L. Price in Washington and Thomas Beaumont in Des Moines, Iowa contributed to this report.